Hey there my friends, Hank here, and today we're going to paint and weather up this lovely Tamiya M8 Greyhound. It's been sitting on my shelf fully built up for a while now, and we haven't done a complete vehicle finish video in a bit, so let's do it. First things first, as always, let's get a coat of black primer on here. You'll notice I've got a bit of resin stowage on the vehicle as well. This is from the good folks over at Value Gear, and I will have links down in the description below to all of the materials used in today's lesson if you'd like to check those out. With our primer coat applied, next let's spray our interior of the fighting compartment here with some satin white. Don't worry about overspray, we'll clean all that up in just a bit here. With our interior all freshly painted, let's slip this upper hull panel into place here temporarily. And then we're going to fill the compartment with toilet paper. Just do your best to stuff a bunch in there and try to ensure that all the sidewalls, the steering wheel, the dash, all that good stuff are all properly covered up. Now that our interior is protected, let's break out our olive drab dark base and get our main body color painted in here. Don't worry about a bit of overspray on the tires themselves, we can come back and clean those up a little later on in the process. Alright, with our olive coat on there, let's pop that upper hull panel off and see how our interior looks. A little bit of overspray on there, but nothing we can't fix. At this stage, let's make sure we also spray our separate hull panel here with some olive drab as well. Alright folks, it's detail brushing time. I'll leave some extended footage here of me working for reference, but if you do need some specific tips on painting external vehicle stowage and accessories, I do have a complete tutorial on the subject with some tips for paint selection and the like, so I will link to that right here. But with that said, sit back, grab yourself a nice cold beverage, and let's paint up some detail bits. Alright, we're back. And now we've got a whole pile of stowage painted up. At this stage, we're going to spray our whole vehicle with a coat of gloss varnish to seal in our work and get us ready to move on to the weathering stage. Once that varnish is fully cured, we're going to start with our fighting compartment here. I've got a bit of enamel dark wash loaded up on my brush, and I will say, this does look super messy at first, of course, but stick with it here. Most of this compartment is going to be obscured once we get the turret on there and eventually get some figures in here, so we're really pushing the grime factor up a notch to help pop the few tiny details we will be able to see. Once we've got some of our dark wash in there, let's thin it out a bit with some enamel thinner, remove a bit of the excess, and help this flow into all the details of our compartment here. Once we're happy with the effect, let's allow this to dry completely. We'll come back and carry on with some pigments in our interior in just a bit. Next, we'll move on to weathering up the outside of our vehicle with some more of that dark wash. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll recognize this technique. I like to do a bit of a combo of a messy pin wash and a sludge wash that will then smooth out with some enamel thinner. I think this creates a nice natural grime effect that we're going to start to replicate here. Once we've got our dark wash applied, just like with our interior, we're going to come back with our thinner and help the wash flow and settle into all the nooks and crannies of our sculpt, removing any excess from flat and raised surfaces along the way. Once our initial dark wash has dried completely, we're going to break out a little bit of our enamel light dust, and we're going to start to replicate some mud and dust effects on the undercarriage of our vehicle. I like to dabble this in an uneven pattern all around the edges of these lower panels, as you can see here. A little splashing along the way is also quite helpful. It adds a nice natural effect. Once that initial application of light dust is on there, we'll switch over to a bit of enamel thinner and start to blend that dust product into the surrounding areas of the vehicle. Once this fully dries, it'll give us a lovely caked on, dried dust effect as though the vehicle has been operating on some arid, dusty roads. At this stage, we're going to want to apply the same product to our wheels themselves. I do find it easier to do this with the wheels attached, but whatever works best for you. We want to brush this product all over the tires, ensuring that it flows into all of the treads. And then we'll come back with some thinner, and once again, we'll blend this product in. We'll try to remove most of the accumulated dust from the wheel wells and try and get it to stay in the tire treads as it would in real life. Once the enamel dust effects have dried on our wheels and lower hull, let's come back with some pigments and add a little more texture to our weathering. Here I'm using some Europe Earth pigment and dabbling this in a similar pattern to what we did with our initial product. We're following along the upper lines of the undercarriage as well as the treads of the tires. Nothing fancy here, this is dirt. Don't overthink it, try to apply this product like it were real dirt. Think, where is the dirt and dust going to be kicking up on this vehicle, and then try to emulate that. I always recommend using at least 2 pigment colors for any dirt and dust weathering because dirt isn't all one color in real life, of course. So I'm coming back here and adding a few little blotches of Kursk soil and blending this in with the surrounding pigments. Alright, now we want to create some pigment effects on the inside of our fighting compartment because, of course, the crew will be tromping around in and out of here day in and day out. I like to take a very small amount of pigment on my brush and try and dabble this in the areas where you could see the crew working inside the vehicle, and then I try and blend this into the corners where this dirt would naturally accumulate over the course of the vehicle's use. And just so you can get a bit of an idea of what this is going to look like when you pop the upper hull and the turret on there, you can only get a little glimpse of the interior there. So there we go. Alright, next we want to do a little bit of dust work on our upper surfaces. Once again, trying to visualize where dust would accumulate as this vehicle is moving along the countryside. Aim for the areas around the turret ring, around the stowage, and below our hatches. We also want to make sure we carry a bit of that dust up onto the bottom of the turret itself. And with all of our weathering work applied, it's finally time to seal in our work with a bit of matte varnish. Now, this is a new approach for me. Usually, I apply my enamel products, spray on the matte coat, and then apply my pigment work, but I wanted to test this out and see how well the matte varnish can lock in pigments without losing too much of that texture effect. Let me know what you guys think at the end. It's subtle, but I do think I like it. Alright, at this stage, we've got a few additional accessories to paint up. First, our big ol' Ma Deuce up here on the top of the turret. And we've got a couple of antennas. I chose to keep these off until the end here so I wouldn't accidentally damage them. These are the kit antenna bases with aerials made of guitar strings. I do have a full tutorial on how to make those as well, and I will link to that right here. I chose to hold off on adding some ammo to the racks inside of the turret itself at the moment. I want to pick up some aftermarket metal ones, so I'll have to come back and pop those in here later, so stay tuned for that. After a little bit of detail work on these final accessories, all that's left to do is mount them on our M8. The antennas can be super glued into place, and then I've gone ahead and tied these back with a little bit of thread. You often see the antennas on M8s stowed like this in archival shots from World War II. With some final cleanup and a last coat of matte varnish on our last little additions here, we've got ourselves a finished M8 Greyhound. And at this point, I have to say, have you ever found yourself looking at a kit and saying, what did I miss here? I completely forgot to add decals to this build. Whoops. Well, honestly, that is the first time I've done that. Oh well, this will be an incognito M8, I guess. And honestly, the crews often did paint over the national insignia on these vehicles, especially in the later war period for some extra camouflage, so I guess this all works out alright. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I loved this kit, and it's a wonderful way to mix it up after working on a bunch of tanks, and in typical Tamiya fashion, it goes together like a charm. So, thanks for watching, my friends, and until next time, be well, happy building, cheers.